day, of course.
I was living an entirely ordinary life until tragedy struck our family. My wife's father, my father-in-law, passed away unexpectedly. I can't say a single bad word about him. On the contrary, he was a great guy. If the situation called for it, he was ready to give you the shirt off his back. My wife Vera loved him deeply and was constantly in touch with him. Naturally, after his death, she looked like a living corpse. She lost her appetite, slept almost all the time, and responded to everything in monosyllables. She even had to quit her job. I had hoped her boss would understand her condition and allow her unpaid leave. But no, they didn't need employees like that. It was painful to see my wife like that, and I didn't know how to help her. Through a friend, I managed to get prescription medication. As she took it, her health improved slightly, but some things couldn't be fixed by pills. Vera asked me every week to take her to the cemetery. Usually, we went together and left our daughter with my mother. But this time, things didn't go as planned. Friday was approaching, and Vera, as usual, asked me to take her to her father's grave. I agreed and called my mom. "Hi Mom, how are you?" But instead of the usual greeting, I heard, "What happened?" "I can't help you anymore." I understood. Maybe I should bring her some medicine. The conversation shifted, and I told Vera the news. We had nowhere to leave our daughter, so we'd all go together. Saturday came. Vera hadn't slept since early morning. She made breakfast for me and our daughter, but didn't eat herself. A couple of hours later, we arrived. Vera approached her father's grave and started talking to him as if he were alive. I watched with concern, and then the inevitable happened. She broke down in hysterics. Tears streamed down her cheeks, and she muttered fragmented phrases in a trembling voice. I was used to this sight, but our daughter Karina clearly wasn't. "Do you have your phone?" I asked her. "Go take a walk." She turned and left. "Where's Karina?" Vera asked anxiously. "She's nearby. I'll call her." I couldn't see her, but when I reached her by phone, she said she'd stepped away and would be back soon. A minute later, I saw her silhouette near the fence. We got in the car and drove home. Something had to be done. I felt that the more Vera visited the cemetery, the worse she became. But what could I do? I couldn't forbid her from going, yet seeing her like this was unbearable. I spent the day catching up on a week's worth of tasks. As soon as my head hit the pillow, I fell asleep like a rock. I woke up full of energy, unlike Vera, who looked disheveled and anxious. These cemetery visits had to stop. "Vera, what's wrong?" She paused, tasting her words, then whispered, "Honestly, I don't know." "What do you mean?" "I don't know how much I slept, or if I slept at all." "Did you take your pills yesterday?" "That's the thing, I did. But nothing makes sense. You fell asleep. I was still playing on my phone. I didn't feel like sleeping. Then I put the phone away and went to the bathroom. Came back, still couldn't sleep. I tried lying this way and that, counting elephants, nothing worked. Eventually, my head started hurting, so I went to the kitchen to take another pill. Took it, and about 20 minutes later, I started to drift off, but I didn't fall asleep. She bit her lip, clearly debating whether to continue. "Well, what happened next?" "Promise you won't send me to a mental hospital." I tensed up. She continued, "Wait, you said you were falling asleep." "Yeah, maybe I dreamed it," she shrugged. "Who knows?" "Okay, I won't send you to a hospital, but you should see a doctor." I know it'll be hard for you, but maybe we can cut back on the cemetery visits. You know, I've been thinking the same. Enough already before the dead start following us home. Alright, Vera, lie down and rest. You'll make breakfast for our daughter. Thanks. She lay down and fell asleep almost immediately. I tried to be as quiet as possible and told our daughter not to make noise. She understood. We spent most of the day quietly. Vera woke up closer to evening. We had dinner and I went to bed. The next morning, I got ready for work as quietly as I could. The day started normally. Vadim, come home immediately. Vera screamed, not just spoke loudly, but screamed. Vera, what happened? Just take leave and come home. Horrible images flashed through my mind. Something must have happened to Karina. One answer was enough to send me flying out of the office. I called my boss, who understood and let me go without questions. I drove like a madman, probably got a few tickets, but who cares? I burst through the door, bracing for the worst, but was met with confusion. What the hell? There stood my daughter, alive and well. From her look, I could tell she had the same question. But Vera looked terrifying, swollen, red from crying, disheveled hair, trembling hands. Sweetheart, what happened? I asked my daughter, realizing Vera wouldn't answer. Dad, I don't know. Mom came into my room and started yelling at me out of nowhere. I was just playing. She was playing, but not alone. Vera suddenly shouted. It was the phone. Karina looked down, ashamed. Honestly, Vera, what happened? I demanded. I was in the kitchen making lunch and heard voices. Thought it was neighbor kids outside. The windows were open, but the chatter got annoying. So I turned off the stove and went to Karina's room. The window was closed, but I still heard voices. I got scared and called her. She came out, but the room was empty. Honestly, I stood there like a fool, not knowing what to say. Karina, tell Dad what happened. I was just talking to a friend on the phone. That's all, she said, spreading her arms. That's when I realized trouble had arrived. I didn't go back to work that day. I spent the rest of it talking to Vera. I insisted she see a doctor. She kept saying she was fine. We argued fiercely. Either you walk to the doctor yourself, or I'm calling your mother. Don't call Mom. Then go to the doctor. No discussion. She was offended, as expected. In her eyes, I was a tyrant, forcing her to admit she was crazy. But no alcoholic admits they're an alcoholic. Maybe no mentally ill person can admit it either. I personally booked her an appointment with a private psychiatrist, knowing it would cost a lot, so be it her health was worth it. The next day, she went to the doctor. I felt at peace. Life seemed to slowly return to normal. The weekend approached. Instead of going to the cemetery, Vera decided to go out with a friend. I was all for it and told her I'd enjoy some alone time. I looked forward to drinking beer and watching football all day, but my plans didn't pan out. Around noon, my mom called. Karina wasn't feeling well. I didn't ask her to take care of her. I went to pick her up myself. Turned out it was nothing serious, just a stomachache from too many chips and chocolate. At home, I gave her medicine. She took the pills and went to her room. I still wanted to crack open a couple of beers, so I didn't hesitate. I settled in front of the TV in the kitchen, watching sports, but something kept distracting me. Strange noises. During a commercial break, I muted the TV and listened. The sounds were coming from Karina's room. Seemed like she was talking on the phone again. I grabbed the remote. about to turn the volume back up, but dropped it. It clattered loudly on the tile. Her phone was charging in the kitchen. So what the hell was going on in her room? Open the door now or I'll break it down. I shouted so loudly my ears rang. She was allowed to lock her door. We never forbade it, but she never did. A few seconds later, she opened it. I rushed in. What the hell, no one was there. Laptop off. Phone charging under the bed. Nothing under the bed. I checked the closet just in case, though it was too small for anyone to hide. I checked the window. We live on the 3rd floor, but still you never know. Karen, sweetheart, who were you talking to? I asked as calmly as I could. No one, she replied. I slammed my fist on the desk. Come on, honey, we're all really worried. But how did you manage to shut down the computer so quickly? Don't you believe me? She sniffled again. I agreed with her version, but deep down I thought it might be wise to install a camera in her room. I didn't like any of this. Vera had already gone to a psychiatrist, but something had to be done. I clearly heard voices. Before bed, I seriously considered taking unpaid leave or at least a few days off. I'd talk to my boss tomorrow. I decided not to tell Vera anything yet. What if it made her worse? I could handle this myself. Of course I could. With those thoughts, I lay down and soon fell asleep. The workday went better than expected. My boss signed off on my leave without hesitation. I was finishing up my last day, and when it was time to go home, I headed not to the apartment, but to an electronics store. Unfortunately, they didn't have what I needed, so I had to place an order. By the time I finished shopping, the traffic had cleared. The roads were nearly empty, so I relaxed and drove calmly, singing along to the radio. Suddenly, I had to slam on the brakes. A teenager appeared out of nowhere. What the hell are you doing? I shouted through the open window. He just looked at me, turned around, and quickly ran off the road. Seriously, was it so hard to walk 2 steps to the crosswalk? Back home, I told my wife and daughter I wouldn't be going to work for a couple of weeks. Vera was thrilled. But Karina's reaction was strange. Her face showed clear fear and confusion. I didn't want to press her. She wouldn't give a straight answer anyway. That night, I suddenly woke up with a strong craving for a cigarette. It happened often, so I wasn't surprised. I tried to resist, but the urge won. I slipped on my slippers, threw on a jacket, and quietly snuck out so I wouldn't wake the family or the neighbors. I gently closed the door behind me. One puff, then another, and I felt better. I stared peacefully at the night sky through the dusty window of the stairwell. The cigarette was nearly down to the filter. I took one last drag, flicked the butt into a makeshift ashtray, and turned around. Jesus, I gasped. Startled, I jumped and cursed. Standing in front of my apartment door was the same teenager. Hey kid, what are you doing here? He said nothing. I'm talking to you. I growled through clenched teeth, getting more and more irritated. I came for your daughter, he said flatly, without emotion. For who? Get lost. As I spoke, I noticed something strange. His skin was unnaturally pale, like had been dipped in white paint. I'll take her anyway, he said in a monotone voice. I stood frozen in the hallway as he slowly walked down the stairs. His final words terrified me and enraged me. My daughter was only 8 years old, and here was some creep saying he was going to take her. Back in the apartment, I immediately woke my wife and daughter and demanded an explanation. Honestly, I was ready to hear anything but not this. Karina burst into tears. "You're going to be mad at me. Speak." "This is serious," I said sternly. "It's Leisha. I took a toy from him at the cemetery." "What do you mean? You met him at the cemetery?" Vera asked, confused. "No. Remember you told me never to take anything from a grave? Well, while you and Dad were sitting by Grandpa's grave, I went for a walk and took a toy from one of the graves." "Wait, you brought a toy home from the cemetery?" I asked. "Yes. You're not lying to us." "No. I remember exactly where I got it." Without waiting for morning, we instinctively drove to the cemetery. Luckily, it was close to the road. And yes, Karina wasn't lying. The same boy's face stared at us from the headstone. Thankfully, Vera didn't come face to face with his likeness, but something inside me shifted. I'd never believed in mysticism or the supernatural until now. Or maybe it was just his twin brother playing a sick joke. That's possible. Leisha died only 5 months ago, and there are plenty of weirdos out there. Maybe a relative decided to mess with us. Karina immediately returned the toy to the grave. On the way back, none of us spoke. At home, we went straight to our rooms. After that incident, I thought maybe the whole family needs to see a psychiatrist. My vacation was ending. I lay in bed, dreading the next day. I didn't want to go back to work. But who cares, right? No one. The first day back was rough. I felt off, distracted. Vera said she'd be visiting her mother, and Karina would be home alone. But she's a big girl, she'd find something to do. Only 10 minutes left in the workday. I sat fidgeting in my chair, staring at the clock. Why did the last minutes of the day crawl so slowly? Suddenly, my phone rang. It was Vera. I answered casually. "What's up?" "Something terrible. Karina is gone." I swear, in that moment, the ground disappeared beneath me. "What do you mean, gone?" My vision darkened. I grabbed my head and asked, "Who told you?" "I'm heading there now." I told her and hung up. The rest of the trip was a blur. Her words kept echoing in my head. Our daughter is no longer alive. But how? Our wiring is fine. Karina never played with matches. She was always careful with fire. Could that pale boy really have taken her? Was it all real? I arrived at the building. My hands went ice cold. My heart pounded. Police were already there, writing reports. I just stood and watched as flames burst from the shattered windows of our apartment.